Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Mokona Man at YouTube with another modelling video. Last week I requested for a Q&A session. You guys are asking me some questions. Today I will give you some answers. We'll get straight into it. I don't have much admin-y sort of shit to do. Julian. Where can I find the little detail parts for 1144 Gundam, like metal parts, gems, extra little detail parts in the United States? I'm sure you're referring to the little gems and bits and pieces that I use. The little gems are sticky backed crystals used for mobile phones, doing little decorations and whatnot. I go to Asian style dollar shops, or $2 shops, more commonly known in Australia. If you have anything like that, they are absolutely excellent for finding those little gems. If not, eBay. Everything else, there's all sorts of little mini parts you could use, such as small electrical components, solder wire, photo etch parts. It's generally what you can find in your travels. You can chop up super glue, styrene stick, whatever. When you go shopping in hardware shops, craft shops, you guys got Walmart. It's pretty much everything under one roof. When you're looking at all sorts of stuff, you just need to have a mind of repurposing it and applying it to your model kits. So, and don't blow your budget or anything. Don't be looking at expensive components. Just cheap 50-cent dollar stuff, $2 stuff. Have a look around at these sort of stores and see what you can do. If you're looking for proper official aftermarket parts, resin parts and whatnot, you need to hunt around websites such as Alibaba Express, Alibaba, stuff like that. They'll have actual resin aftermarket parts. E2046 has the B Club style cover parts where you get a master grade, and then it comes with parts swaps to build a different complete variant. You can definitely find those. Have a look at Facebook groups and forums, tutorials. People in their work in progresses will show where they've found parts and repurposed it in their Gundam kits. They may be aftermarket parts for other style of styrene or model kits, so that could also be very useful. Also ask other modelers in the United States. They might be able to give you some insight of where they get their local stuff. But yeah, I hope that definitely answers your question. John, how do I get rid of these nasty seam lines on the Iron-Blooded Orphan kits? Namely the forearms on the 1100 Chimerus Trooper. I'll quickly Google that. I don't know what that robot is. So we will quickly go into Google. With filling seam lines, first what you need to... Why does it not want to go to Google? First what you need to do is plastic cement the two surfaces together, allow that to dry for a period of time. Afterwards, use modelling putty. I suggest Squadron Green type. There's Tamiya basic type, a few out there. I'm actually starting to get really fond of bog putty for automotive work. It's quite thick and it works quite beautifully. Okay, so I'm having a look at it. It's that unicorny four-legged knight type Gundam. And the forearms do not really look any much more different than any other kit. I assume it's the white part for colour separation. You've got the blue part and then you got the white part that actually goes over it. Unfortunately, there's two ways around it. You mask the blue part off and glue it as one part, paint the white bit, mask it off, paint the blue bit, or vice versa. What you need to do is have a look at the blue part and see if there's pegs that you need to cut in the white bit so it just slides on like a sleeve. It will be initially loose, but once everything is painted, you can slide it on and you can PVA glue the inside. So that means everything is plastic cemented together, the blue part. The white part, do test fit. See how it goes in, see it goes out. Is there any pegs that you need to cut so it does not interfere with the blue bit? When those parts are removed, it should be able to slide straight in, straight out. And that's the case. Plastic cement it, putty it, sand it. You're absolutely winning. Do that with every other part. I've got tutorials on filling seam lines. Have a look at my seam line filling tutorial. Have a look at my Squadron putty review. Sand down to from about 200 to 300 grit sandpaper, and then buff it up with about 500-600 grit sandpaper, 1000 grit if you have to, and you're absolutely laughing. Spray a bit of primer on it, and if it's not sunken or re-split, you're absolutely winning. Super glue is also really good. What I've recently been doing is plastic cementing it, putting the tiniest amount of super glue down the seam, and what that does is, as well as fills it, it gives it that extra strength on the surface so it's less likely to split, and it works very, very well on larger seams. Next question. Thank you very much for your question, Joseph. Thank you, mate. You've asked a few questions. Greetings, Makana Man. Thank you for sharing this video and for your time and effort. Thank you very much. Here's 4 questions for me about airbrushing, so we'll get straight into it. What nozzle size you recommend for airbrushing primer? Any advice or hints for nozzle sizes with the retention from air pressure? Nozzle versus PSI for each size. The larger the nozzle size, the higher the PSI, and the smaller the better. I have experience from 0.2mm to 0.5mm and higher than that for spray guns. 0.2 I do not recommend for priming. I look at about 11 to 13, 14 PSI. 0.3, that's what I mostly prime with. The trick to priming is you mix the primer external to the airbrush. You get it nice and thin with the thinner. Pour it in, and then you could spray it quite easily. Obviously that your nozzle is free from debris and cleaned out by being removed, and a pipe cleaner swabbed through it. You want that to be between 11 and 15 psi. That works quite lovely if the thinner is thin enough. 0.5 has a large overspray. It's good for large models, not so good for smaller ones. You need to start going up to 20 psi. Question 2. Any idea why I came with dusty results when airbrushing varnish, aka gloss varnish? Does the PSI affect the results? The reason why you're getting that dusty / frost look on gloss is because of overspray and because you're not using enough thinner. Overspray is when you've got the focus, the eye of the paint that's coming out and landing on the model, and the particles that are spreading out even further than that dries mid-air, lands on your model, and it's sort of like orange peel. It can be very, very annoying. When doing clears, you want the paint to land as close and wet on your model as humanly possible. What you'll need to do is increase the amount of thinner. I normally put way more thinner in my finishes than in my paint. So look at doubling the amount of thinner in your gloss and spray a bit closer to your model. You want it to land on it really, really sopping wet without it actually streaking. Do it in very, very thin coats, and if it's just super, super wet, there's no excuse for it to dry mid-air before it lands on your model, including overspray. So more thinner, spray a bit closer, mist it on, and just only very, very light coats. It's going to take a while for it to dry on the surface. If you've got access to retardants, That's really good. To me, it does a good retardant. So does Mr. Colour or Mr. Hobby, Goonsey. They both say acrylic. They are compatible with acrylic Tamiya Goonsey paint as well as lacquers. So give that a go and leave it a while to dry in the model, and once it's hardened it'll look clear, it'll look like glass, and you can apply another second or third coat. So that's what's known as a wet coat, when it lands on the model wet and it stays wet. So that's more thinner. 3. Can I paint lacquer paint, Mr. Colour, over enamel paint? Tamiya. In theory, no, because supposedly lacquer eats into enamel. With airbrushing and hobby grade paints, the long answer is yes. Tamiya, especially Tamiya enamel, has a chemical tolerance to lacquers, especially if you spray the lacquers really fine. So you apply your lacquer base, you allow it the full amount of time to mature, harden and dry. Drying is when the skin dries and it appears dry but it's still soft like putty, and if you touch it with your hand it leaves a fingerprint. But if you allow it to chemically harden so you can handle how many hours it does take for Tamiya, then you can start dusting on and slowly in thin coats applying the Mr. Hobby. So that should not be a problem. Do a test piece, see how it reacts. If it's all good, go to town. Not a problem whatsoever. 4. Can I use weathering enamel paint over acrylic paint? Yes, you can. If you're using the acrylics, the Aqueous acrylics by Mr. Hobby, or the Tamiya stuff, they have a little bit of a chemical tolerance to enamels and lacquers. If we're talking about your water-based or polyurethane-based paints like Gaia Notes, no, not Gaia Notes, lacquer, like Citadel, Vallejo, AK Interactive, they've got no chemical tolerance. So what I suggest is, if you're using any paints that has no chemical tolerance to enamel, give it a clear Tamiya acrylic that does have tolerance, and once that's fully dried and hardened, go to town with your weathering. So remember, just only Tamiya, and Mr. Aquarius Colour can take enamels. Anything else, just give it a clear coat and you're free to go. So that's not a problem. You might just need to add extra clear. Thank you again, and keep going. Your great job. Thumbs up. Thank you very much. Thank you for your long time support and asking questions during this segment. It does create interesting content. Samuel asks, maybe this isn't the best question to ask here, but what is the best way to mend, weld, cast iron other than brazing or with any other welding tools? When you got a small hole or seam split in cast iron, or any sort of metalwork that may appear in plumbing or your car, me and a few friends have done this before. Milliput, which we use for sculpting and putty work, amazingly is really good with things like radiators and whatnot, holding water in, reacting to heat and whatnot. If you just roll a small sausage of that, jam it in and smooth it out, it's a good temporary fix for metalwork, and it can go around weld work. But in the end, welding, tacking metal on metal to fill something is the best, and it's pretty much permanent unless it's under a lot of pressure, weight, whatever. If it's not under that much pressure, you can stick Milliput in there, see how long it can last for. Anything else, I can't really recommend, but a few of us have repaired cars and bad leaky radiators and other things with Milliput. I probably shouldn't go any further in other dodgy repair methods, because people might copy and get into some sort of trouble or injury or break something down. But that should work. Tim asks, using no less than 12 curse words, please explain why you love Hobby Link Japan. Being the Makana man, I don't really curse that much because it's a friendly, a family-friendly content. I dislike that service due to its detriment to brick and mortar hobby stores. They go around the process of supplies of kits. They don't go through local suppliers and whatnot. They're probably known more as a parallel importer. So if your country has a proper network of supplies and whatnot of importing paints, importing kits, because they come in large shipping containers and they come in quite slow, they give you opportunity to buy things in bulk. Supplies are very, very regular, and it funds the hobby shops, which stay open, the brick and mortar stores, which you can visit anytime when you need to buy your smalls as well as your big kits. You may think kits may be cheaper on the internet, but if hobby stores close down, and you can still buy your kits pretty cheap on the internet, when you need to buy small aftermarket parts, a couple of paints, glue, putty, whatever, you need to buy that stuff in bulk to make it worthwhile, or you just have a lot of trouble coming across it, and you'll have to find other alternatives, especially since you've gotten comfortable. And things like rattle cans, lacquers, airbrushes are just going to be not available to you at all, because some countries do not ship those sort of goods, or they're just way out of your price range, or the colour options are just not there for you. So you should do a proportion of your shopping with brick and mortar shops. Support them. Brick and mortar shops, or at least the good ones, supportive of local events, hobby shows, competitions, giveaways, stuff like that. The more hobby shops in an area, the more hobbyists there are, the more chances that communities band together at those points in real life. Now that's not to say that all hobby shops are good. There are some brick and mortar stores that might be the only one local to you or out there that sort of takes advantage of the hobby. They're there purely as a business, and they're just there to squeeze as much dollars as humanly possible out of the modeler by doing unethical stuff. But I find that some of their practices in the past have been unethical in the way that they approach all online communities and set a regime of sponsorship where there's very little to nothing being given back in return of mass advertisements and demands to exclusively shop with them and have loyalty, yet offering very little in return for grassroots communities to grow as model clubs or in real life competitions. I hope that answers that question. But besides getting probably very rare resin tanks from Japan, aftermarket parts, probably the odd 72nd obscure tank no one will carry, I wouldn't even give them a second look at it. Very common large manufactured kits, Bandai stuff, none of that. They would do damage to things like the card campaign, the Gunpla Builders World Cup. If they sell too many kits in the region and local shops don't, you could definitely say goodbye to those perks. Last question. This is regarding the extra thin cement QuickType. Someone made a comment that you can use the Tamiya extra thin cement QuickType on its own. It is a cement, and there was a reference and link to the Tamiya website. I had a few other people approach me about this. The apparent correct way by Tamiya to use the quick extra thin cement is to clamp the two parts together, get the brush out and just run it down the seam. This way that it becomes molten quick and it hardens very quick. This would work for very thin kits such as fuselages of aircraft or the artillery thin kits and whatnot. I don't really model in that way. It's not too suitable for me. My method is unorthodox. It's a popular method used in Australia and warmer climates. It dries insanely quick, too quick once you apply and you clamp together. It's pretty much skinned and almost dried, and it's not going to stick the two parts together. I've done this in front of a group of people. The best way around it is using it as an accelerator. It works very well like that. If the Tamiya recommended version works for you, that's alright. You don't really have to look further into this video. If you're curious and you'd like to see how it applies as an accelerator, especially for humid countries, cold countries, places where the weather affects the drying time of glues, it works really, really well. A layer of glue, a layer of that, dries a bit faster, clamp it together, it's ready to sand within 10 minutes, and I still stand by that more or less. In the way of shout-outs, no one's requested any shout-outs. For anyone that's into building Gundam kits, you want to put up your A game, you're on Facebook, Old Gunpla forums, we've got a lot of seasoned modelers there. At the moment there's a lot of people dumping and sharing their YouTube work on there, reviews and whatnot. So it's a good place. You may discover a new YouTuber doing reviews or building kits. There's a bit of resin work going on there. There's a bit of tips and trades and tricks regarding painting and modifying. So check it out, join it. It's a fun, very laid back, no rules, no bullshit group. That aside, I think that's absolutely it. In the way around the studio, I've got 2 videos coming out in the next week or so. I've got the SMS review on Liquid Mask. It's an alternative to, well, this sort of business. I've got a model that I'm working on that I'm going to be testing the Tamiya, the new Tamiya masking tape used for curved surfaces. So that is going to be a review sometime in the future. I'm working heavily on an E2046 resin kit, so look forward to updates on that. I've got a lot of tank kits that I've built, and I'm putting the review videos together for that. I'm putting the tutorials out first because that's very beneficial. Then I'll be putting out the tank kits after that. There's a few events, or there's one event that's going to be occurring near the end of the year, the Bayonet Military Model Competition in Werribee, Australia. I'll be covering that with that wonderful B24 Liberator in the centre of the room. And that will probably go into Christmas and the New Year. And I will be continually doing a few tutorials, building a few kits that I fancy, and carrying on. I've got a large 3D printing project on the go. Pictures will be up about that fairly shortly. And that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for more content. Be aware I've got a Facebook page, The Mokono Man, regular updates. Last night I did a Twitch stream to test out my new setup and camera. It looks very, very slick. Quite happy that came out. So check out the link down below to that. And if you're got a Twitch account, consider following it. Got a Patreon, which is only a tip jar. Don't pay any heed if you don't want to. And that's about it. Thank you very much. Catch you later. Stay tuned. We'll do another Q&A session next month. Have a good one.